Introduction. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck is a self-help book focused on living a values-based life, rather than an emotions-based one. Published in 2016, it was written by blogger and author Mark Manson. Manson takes an unconventional approach to the self-help genre. He argues that life's struggles give it meaning, and the key to happiness is not trying to avoid all negativity and discomfort. Through humorous and blunt language, he contends that we should focus energy on what truly matters, rather than exhausting ourselves trying to be constantly happy. The book covers how the desire to avoid problems and feel good all the time is unrealistic. Manson makes the case for embracing adversity on the path to personal growth and fulfillment. With satire and philosophy, he aims to reshape how readers think about happiness, hardships, and what constitutes a life well lived. Chapter 1. Don't Try. The chapter opens with Manson stating that the key to living a good life is a counterintuitive one. It's not about being indifferent to everything, but also not caring too much about everything either. He argues that many self-help gurus preach loving oneself unconditionally or avoiding anything unpleasant in order to be happy. But Manson claims these approaches set people up for misery when life inevitably brings problems. According to him, the solution lies in what one chooses to care about. Caring too little makes one apathetic, but caring too much, especially about the wrong things, leads to constant stress and disappointment. One must be selective and prioritize appropriately. Manson points out that we all have limited time and energy. It's impossible to fully excel at work, fitness, relationships, hobbies, etc. simultaneously. Manson uses an example of being cut off in traffic to illustrate his point. Getting angry about it shows you care too much about a trivial matter outside your control. But ignoring all conflict for the sake of inner peace allows others to walk over you. The right balance is asserting yourself judiciously based on principles, not emotions. This applies to larger life challenges too. Getting devastated over a breakup shows an overattachment to what you can't control, others' feelings. But vowing to never open your heart to love again to avoid pain is equally unhealthy. Caring appropriately means allowing yourself to love fully, while recognizing relationships may not always work out. Manson argues that modern culture sells the fantasy that we can have amazing careers, bodies, friend circles, parental skills, and more all at once. When that dream inevitably fails, people feel defective for struggling to have it all. In reality, no one excels at everything. Chasing too many dreams spreads our efforts thin. The path to fulfillment is narrowing focus to what truly matters based on our specific situations and abilities. This means abandoning feel-good platitudes like, follow your passion. Passion fades. Building a rewarding life requires drudgery and sacrifice too. Rather than follow each whim, devote yourself to meaningful causes aligned with your strengths and values, even when hard. That's how you become who you were meant to be. Chapter 2. Happiness is a problem. Manson opens Chapter 2 arguing that much of modern culture has embraced a feel-good ethos that values constant happiness, positivity, and comfort above all else. Self-help gurus, advertisements, and social media paint unrealistic portrayals of perfect lives. This sets people up for disappointment when the inevitable pitfalls of real life occur. He notes the irony that in our age of material abundance, rates of depression and anxiety continue to rise. Manson traces this unhappiness to a prevalent mindset that one should not have to experience emotional pain. Sayings like, don't worry, be happy, or cheer up, imply feeling sad, stressed, or angry means failure. The self-esteem movement encourages empty praise over honest feedback to protect kids' feelings. According to Manson, this sugarcoating does more harm than good. Emotional resiliency comes from confronting fears and hard truths. While momentary contentment is nice, life satisfaction depends on engaging adversity to gain wisdom and strength of character. Yet modern norms demonize struggling, causing people to hide normal doubts, insecurities, and setbacks. Social media worsens the problem. Comparing carefully curated personal highlights reels with their daily behind-the-scenes breeds jealousy and despair at not measuring up to impossible standards of non-stop success and joy. Manson argues that these distortions create victims out of ordinary, vulnerable human beings. In reality, Manson asserts, pain is inevitable no matter one's circumstances. Clinging desperately to positivity inevitably backfires. And suppressing negative feelings only causes them to fester and grow. The solution lies not in avoiding discomfort at all costs, but learning how to handle it. This builds emotional resilience, along with character, purpose, and self-awareness. Rather than promise lives devoid of frustration and heartache, Manson says society should equip people to confront hardship. By embracing the inevitability of problems and imperfections, we can develop the strength to endure life's ups and downs. That capacity for thriving through struggle is true happiness. Chapter 3: You Are Not Special. Manson opens this chapter by claiming that many self-help gurus demonize desire and yearning as the roots of all human suffering. But he argues that wanting more for oneself is inevitable, as it's coded into our DNA to seek better circumstances and emotional states. Dissatisfaction serves evolutionarily adaptive purposes like prompting us towards goals. The problem arises when we cling too tightly to getting what we want, growing desperate for any quick fix of positive feeling through consumerism, substances, social media, etc. Modern culture sells the fantasy that we should always feel good. When reality fails to match this unrealistic expectation, people crash emotionally. Manson asserts this is backwards logic. Emotional pain serves necessary functions too, including signaling important areas requiring growth or change. Avoiding natural lows also dulls the highs. Furthermore, chasing positivity by trying to control uncontrollable things or people is futile, generating more frustration. Instead of demonizing all desire, the key is to channel yearnings appropriately. Manson says we should direct wanting towards enhancing life's meaning through giving, learning, and building character. This deeper sense of purpose sustains emotional resilience far better than surface pleasures alone. None of this means settling for misery or neglecting problems causing genuine harm. But not every undesirable feeling warrants dramatic action either. Manson argues the path to sustainable contentment lies in focusing efforts where they can make a real difference. This involves honestly assessing limitations around time, energy, and influence. People simply can't excel simultaneously in too many domains, nor force solutions for issues outside their control. Manson contends that narrowing attention to what genuinely matters given one's unique talents and circumstances is the subtle art behind not giving a fuck about the wrong things. Chapter 4: The Value of Suffering. Chapter 4 sees Manson build on his argument against the feel-good fixation of modern culture. He asserts that the most reliable path towards a life well lived lies in embracing rather than avoiding pain and hardship. Manson claims that the self-esteem movement's intentions backfired by failing to prepare people for inevitable struggles. Handing out empty trophies and praise set up expectations that crumble at the first real failure. Instead of chasing non-stop happiness, Manson advocates pursuing meaningful values, purposes, and challenges bigger than oneself. He argues that this mentality ironically generates far deeper fulfillment than comfort-seeking alone. Facing fears, overcoming obstacles, and earning accomplishments through effort in turn builds emotional resilience to life's ups and downs. Manson points to various psychological studies showing that people gain a greater sense of meaning and life satisfaction when they have to work for rewards. He references research on lottery winners finding quick money brings temporary joy but rarely lasting contentment or growth. Manson argues that Western cultures shift towards convenience, entertainment, and superficial self-esteem rather than earned self-respect through sacrifice has bred more unfulfilled people desperate to fill inner voids. Ultimately, Manson contends that confronting pain voluntarily teaches us how to endure hardships outside our control too. Physical challenges like running marathons or surviving wilderness teach mental toughness and how to thrive under duress. Picking ambitious goals, then persevering through doubts, discomfort, and setbacks transforms the spirit. Manson suggests that embracing rather than avoiding struggle ironically alleviates suffering by strengthening us to handle anything. The path to being truly unfuckwithable lies in seeking challenges worthy of the required grit. This mentality defines the subtle art of not giving a fuck about adversity getting in the way of higher aims. Chapter 5: You Are Always Choosing. Manson opens Chapter 5 emphasizing that our values and decisions determine whether life feels positive or negative far more than external events alone. He argues that moment to moment, we choose what to care about and how to interpret situations. These judgments then shape our emotions and experiences. For example, Manson suggests viewing a rainstorm as an annoyance spoiling plans or appreciating the beauty and life it brings. He claims we wrongly blame outside forces for unhappiness when our reactions depend largely on mindsets within our control. Even horrific events hold potential for gain. Post-traumatic growth research shows some trauma survivors report better relationships, new priorities, and greater strength despite enduring hardship. According to Manson, seeing ourselves as helpless victims is self-defeating. While circumstances influence outcomes, he asserts that we still decide what each experience means. Poor responses cause additional suffering on top of external issues. The path forward lies in recognizing our power of interpretation. Manson argues that by learning to separate observation from evaluation, we gain the space between stimulus and response needed to choose better reactions. This allows us to accept realities outside our control with grace while focusing energy where it makes a difference, our chosen values and behaviors amidst life's unpredictability. Ultimately, Manson contends that rather than railing against the unfairness of problems, we can mine them for opportunities to learn and grow. He suggests that taking responsibility for how we make meaning opens the door to inner freedom and strength no matter what comes our way. By governing ourselves wisely, we transcend dependence on external validation. This mentality defines the subtle art behind not giving a fuck when things don't go as we hoped, yet realizing every moment offers chances to define ourselves and what we care about. Chapter 6. You're wrong about everything, but so am I. Manson kicks off Chapter 6 arguing that human knowledge and beliefs are inevitably incomplete and flawed. Even experts researching a niche topic for years hold biased perspectives shaped by limited exposures and inherent cognitive blind spots. And in many domains like philosophy, politics, or religion, conflicting convictions seem equally backed by smart, educated people. Yet most act certain their own worldviews are wholly accurate. Manson traces this overconfidence to psychological tendencies protecting our egos, like confirmation bias and emotional reasoning. Admitting one's deeply held assumptions could be wrong creates intense intellectual discomfort. So people rationalize away contradictions, attacking dissenting ideas rather than questioning their own. But Manson contends embracing fallibility is freeing, opening minds to alternate possibilities. Those recognizing their convictions seem unlikely to be the whole truth become less judgmental of differing perspectives. This epistemic humility also spurs constant reassessment of beliefs to minimize inevitable errors. Manson suggests truly wise people consider opposing views and acknowledge where their own knowledge remains partial. Yet that doesn't mean abandoning all confidence in personal opinions either. Total relativity undermines the ability to decide anything. Manson argues the solution lies in holding strong positions weakly, maintaining beliefs while remaining open to revising them given new arguments or information. This balance allows one to act decisively without getting too attached to any particular worldview. Ultimately, Manson contends that in a complex, unpredictable world, developing absolute certainty about most issues is a fool's errand anyway. Cognitive progress lies in the perpetual accumulation of questions, not conclusions. But for those able to accept the inevitability of missteps in their endless quest for truth, being wrong marks the first step towards getting it right. This mentality of embracing fallibility while still striving for insight defines the subtle art behind not giving a fuck about the unknowable. Chapter 7. Failure is the way forward. In this chapter, Manson argues that failure plays a pivotal role in eventual success and fulfillment. Though society associates failure with shame and inadequacy, Manson contends it provides vital lessons and spurs growth in ways that quick wins rarely do. He asserts that failure forces reassessment of approaches and assumptions, builds endurance through adversity, and motivates renewed efforts. According to Manson, the real failure lies not in stumbling but in letting setbacks permanently derail progress. He suggests emotional resilience stems from a fail better mentality, analyzing past mistakes to inform future trials until one gets it right. Manson argues that this iterative process of refinement through difficulty forges durable character, skills, and innovation. Conversely, Manson argues that fear of failure stunts growth. People who avoid risks shield fragile egos but stagnate. They also grow dependent on external formulas for success rather than developing judgment, initiative, and grit through hands-on experimentation. Manson suggests embracing uncertainty inherent to new endeavors, knowing missteps will occur and harnessing the instructive power of those failures. He contends that figuring one's unique way forward cannot depend wholly on established templates. Conquering fresh challenges or pioneering original contributions demands a tolerance for being wrong and learning from it. Manson claims all exceptional achievements begin as radical unknowns destined to hit dead ends until persistence transforms early flops into ultimate triumphs. Therefore, Manson exhorts readers not just to passively learn from other people's failures but actively cultivate their own. While avoiding obvious dangers, he advocates regularly venturing beyond comfort zones and confronting defeat. Manson argues that falling short repeatedly inoculates against the sting of failure, liberates innovation, and builds the resilience to overcome anything. Only by daring greatly does one become unfathomable in pursuing ambitions and ideals that defy conformity. Chapter 8. The importance of saying no. Manson opens Chapter 8 stating that setting healthy boundaries and turning things down maintains focus on what truly matters. Since caring about anything requires sacrifice, refusing some opportunities is inevitable. Yet many hesitate to say no for fear of missing out, disappointing others, or seeming lazy. Ironically, this people-pleasing tendency backfires, breeding resentment and enabling others' poor behavior. Manson argues that judicious refusal protects time, energy, and sanity required for meaningful pursuits. He suggests evaluating requests against core priorities first before factoring in politeness or precedent. Overcommitment inevitably leads to underdelivering across too many areas. Saying no to time wasters liberates capacity to throw oneself fully into undertakings aligned with what one cares most about. This applies to relationship dynamics too. Failing to set boundaries invites manipulation from unreciprocated givers and takers alike. Manson contends that loving partners support rather than guilt each other's personal needs and limitations. Similarly, noble causes that demand unhealthy sacrifice ultimately undermine their own ends. Instead of always being available, Manson suggests scheduling defined periods for focusing inward so that one can pour from an overflowing cup when contributing to others. Periodic solitude fuels creativity, productivity, and emotional balance to prevent burnout. One must weigh external requests against non-negotiable inner needs. Ultimately, Manson argues that judicious refusal makes space to thrive at one's deepest priorities rather than flounder at too many. Setting boundaries requires tuning out external pressures to evaluate what matters most. While saying no risks disappointing people, it propels those able to do so towards their intended destinations by clearing away unnecessary obstacles pulling them off course. This mentality defines the subtle but profound art behind not giving a fuck about anything, diverting focus from life's true aim. Chapter 9. And Then You Die. Manson opens the final chapter by frankly acknowledging the inevitability of death. He argues that grappling with life's impermanence gives it poignancy, clarifies meaning, and liberates oneself from trivial concerns. Manson suggests the finite nature of existence makes each moment more precious. Knowing time is limited inspires maximizing it rather than frittering it away on hollow pursuits. He contends that the reality of death need not breed despair but can heighten gratitude, presence, and fulfillment. Manson claims confronting mortality with courage can make one feel intensely alive. Letting death loom over every priority and decision separates the truly meaningful from the merely urgent or expected. This discernment brings freedom to live and die on one's own terms. Manson argues further that comprehending death allows fully embracing all of life, joy and pain alike. Attempts to numb suffering also deaden positive sensations. Grappling with death teaches that all experience holds fleeting beauty worthy of appreciation. This mentality liberates one to feel deeply without clinging to what cannot last. Understanding impermanence makes each transient moment more poignant. Manson suggests that the exquisite mixture of sadness and joy accompanying all finite things inspires urgent engagement with life. Confronting death thereby catalyzes awakening to all that makes existence worth living. Ultimately, Manson contends that contemplating mortality hones life's essence. Ignoring death permits wasting the miraculous, improbable gift of being alive. But acknowledging its certainty without flinching liberates profound meaning amidst uncertainty. This mentality defines the subtle art behind not giving a fuck about fear getting in the way of whatever moments remain to shape into what matters most.